This is Robert Mailing with the Sioux Empire Podcast, and I'm here with Sioux Falls mayoral candidate Mike Gunn.
Yes.
And Mike, let's go ahead and jump into our listener questions here. Actually, before we do that, do you have like any opening statement or thesis statement on why you're running or anything like that you want to share?
Well, I guess the only reason why I'm running is because I think I can make a difference. I'd like to do something other than the norm, and I believe that representing the people is going to be the main thing. I don't want to represent the city, I want to represent the people first, so that's kind of why I'm doing it.
Very good. The very first question I have from our listeners is, what would you do to protect public input?
Well, definitely public input would be not only what it is now, probably better, but I'd also want to probably open up town hall meetings. That's one of the things I'd really like to do if I got in, is make sure that we have open town halls where the citizens can come directly to us and basically single us out. Hey, why did you do this or that? Because right now the public input is address us as a whole. Well, I believe that there kind of eliminates responsibility on who is doing what, and we can take it as a whole.
Sure.
So I would like to make sure that if it doesn't stay the way it is, it actually becomes more open.
Okay. Very good. What would you do to increase government transparency?
Well, that's kind of on the same thing as the input. Make sure that everything's open, make sure that the public has access to everything without all the red tape. I mean, every time we try to do something here lately, it seems like we're fighting to get the right paperwork, to get the right petition signed, and then it gets thrown out for a minor technicality. I believe that we should do a little bit of reduction on paperwork there so that people have an easier access to speak their mind. And also, we need accountability. So transparency comes hand in hand with, the idea of making sure that the people are involved. I want to make sure they're really involved.
Very good. What are your goals if you are elected?
Well, the first thing when I'm elected, I'd like to get into the charter. I'd like to revise the charter or reform it or whatever. But I would like to turn around and make sure that everything in the charter protects the citizens themselves. Is it not a fact that we actually represent the citizens, so that way we should make sure that they're protected? And not only that, but we can also go into a lot of our city ordinances and our city regulations and codes and stuff. And I think they need to be revised, and they need to be more direct on what they actually mean. Because right now we're running into a gray area. Every time you have an ordinance, it's got 15 different ways to look at it. I believe it should be point blank and to exactly what it means, so that the citizens understand where they're coming from.
So would you be looking at like setting up like a committee to go through and do like simplification or reorganizing the language, or what apparatus would you use to do that?
Well, basically what I'd like to start with is possibly a constitutional attorney that works for the city.
Okay.
And actually he doesn't work for the city, he represents the people first.
So like an independent attorney that's paid by the city, but
Right.
Sure.
His number one goal would make sure that the citizens are protected regardless of what is written. And I believe that'd be the first step on making sure that we're doing our job, because we're not the ones that need protecting. The city, the people that work for the city should not have to worry about being protected from the citizens. It should be the citizens that are protected from us.
Any other goals while we're on this?
Well, I believe that there's been a lot of talk about the cost of living and housing and everything like that there, and that is another issue. But you also have to take into perspective that anytime you have a big boom of population coming in, just like if you had the oil rigs down in Texas back in the early 80s, there was so much of a big influx coming in that the housing industry couldn't keep up. Well, then of course it becomes the landlord's market to raise value.
Sure.
Everything else is more expensive because there's a higher demand and not enough supply. So until we actually try to slow down our population boom, that's going to be really a difficult one to do, to balance out. But at the same time, when we're building as much as we're building, we need to look at who's getting the housing and who's not. Because right now what I see is we got a lot more of the low-income housing, excuse me, that's actually complementing the people that are on the federal assistance programs. I think we should look at the point of the working citizen that's really out there trying, and they're struggling, and they're getting told they can't get on that. And that's our tax base. That's our capital income.
So you want to, someone was in here the other day talking about how there's a donut hole in Sioux Falls because there's lots of programs and help for like the very bottom, and then the very top gets taken care of. But if you look at like what we do as a community to help like the working middle class that are in that middle of that hole, he was saying there's not enough going on. That's kind of what you're going with that, is just like the working class, basically.
Correct. I think the city could do more to help the ones that fall through the cracks, basically.
Yeah.
Your mid level working class. They get enough help just to survive, but I think we should do a little bit more, because if they are trying, I think we should really get behind them and help them better to make sure that they get up on their feet to a sufficient level to where they are very productive and they're comfortable. I'm not saying we have to make sure they're making millions. I'm just saying we can't drop the ball on them. I mean, especially if they're trying. So I believe that we really need to look at the center part of our tax base as well as the lower and the upper. And once we even that all out, we might be able to get a grip on this housing situation and everything else. But I really don't believe that we should be patting people on the back for not trying. We should really try to get the ones that are on the subsidies, really try to help them to better themselves. But at the same time, we have the middle class that we have to really stay with to give them the ability to improve.
Sure. What do you think, because a lot of that, like a federal program that's, federal and state to state, what do you think the city's role is in, like, augmenting or complementing what's going on there? What do you think the city specifically can do to help with that?
Well, I've been asked on many occasions now, what should we do with extra funding that the city has available? Should we go ahead and spend it on another building, or should we go ahead and build another park, or should we do something else? I think we got to look at just how much funding we do have to play with. And what we can do with that is we can actually give some sort of a child care assistance, or maybe even some kind of a what they call it, a tip program for the landlords to say, hey, if you're going to have somebody that's in the middle working class that's really trying, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, you're a little late, that's month on rent, maybe the city can help. And I know I've been told that government shouldn't be involved in commerce, whether it's people working or something.
Yeah.
But it is already.
Yeah.
It's been behind commerce.
I was gonna say we're not in a free market anyway. The government is already picking winners and losers.
Correct. So why don't we start thinking about the ones that are trying? I mean, we can't forget about them. I mean, they are taxpayers. That they are paying taxes.
Yeah.
But the problem is what I see today is we don't take them serious. Like their little bit that they pay versus the rich or versus the subsidies, they're just as important, if not more important.
Absolutely. Any other goals?
Well, the other goal that I want to do is basically overall, and it comes back to the constitutionality of things, is equal for all. If you're going to say Mr. Johnson over here can't have this tree in his yard, but Mr. Anderson over here can have this tree in his yard, what does it matter? Are we going to pick and choose who can have what tree or what plant or what flowers? So that's just a minor part of it. But equal enforcement of the law would be really nice. I mean, if you're going to arrest somebody because they have a vehicle in their yard, per se, why wouldn't everybody not be able to have a vehicle in their yard? Why is it only certain ones can, and then we're going to pick and choose? So I believe that trying to get it so that our enforcement is equal to everybody gives us all an equal playing field.
Sure. So, like with the example with like blight in the yard, like a car or something like that. So you're kind of going with like what they used to call, I think they still do, like broken windows policy, where you think that like a neighborhood that looks run. Are you thinking more, I guess where I'm going with this is, are you thinking more lenient on like code enforcement like that, or more consistently enforced?
I basically want to look at it all the way across the board, because some things, we have a lot of houses in Sioux Falls. There's a lot of people that have worked all their lives that are on retirement now. They're on a limited income, and they can't afford to paint their house anymore.
Yeah.
They can't afford to do the tree trimming. They are on a fixed income. Now, they may have been a very progressive revenue payer, taxpayer, whatever.
Their whole life.
Job, but now they're retired. What can the city do to work with them instead of saying, well, you have to do this or else? We're going to penalize you. And there's so many options that I think we could look at once I could see where we have extra money that we could probably use. But I believe we should do a pay forward. I really do. I think the city, all of our elderly now that have been working all their lives that are on a fixed income now, they want to stay where they're at. They want to live where they work to have. Why should the city ignore that and say, well, you're not a good enough revenue pay now, so you can't afford to fix your house up. You need to either sell that, you can't pay your taxes, and move into a home. I don't think that's fair.
No.
So when you take it into that level of looking at it, that goes all the way down the chain. It ain't just the elderly. There's other people that are working. You might be working a job and all of a sudden you sprain your ankle. You don't have any workman's comp. You don't have any unemployment. Maybe we can help. Keep you over the hump.
Absolutely.
So enforcement of the ordinances, the regulations, all that, it really comes down to, do we have a little bit of compassion here? Because what I'm seeing is right now we don't. We have a few counselors that have some compassion, but a lot of them are all by the book. And if you're going to be by the book, it should be by the book for everybody, not just because your friend is okay and the other one ain't. So when you talk about, do we want to enforce the ones we have severely or do we want to be lax? I think there's a lot of things we have in the books we don't need.
Okay. Any other goals?
Yeah, the other goal would be that before I would be done on the first 4 years, I would pray that I would have every citizen involved in the vote. I want the people to get involved. What I see today is nobody's involved.
Yeah.
And if I can get people to believe that I'm going to open them doors and their voice is going to mean something, by the time my 4 years is up, I would love to see that never quits. I would like to take my role as mayor and what I know about the Constitution and what I learned, because I am an immigrant. So I had to actually study the Constitution.
Sure.
And everything, and the Bill of Rights, just to become an American citizen. The other thing that was interesting about this whole situation is I had to take an oath to become a citizen. If you're born here, you have no idea of what it means. They didn't teach it in school to that direct point. They taught that, you have the Bill of Rights, there's a Constitution, we have all this da-da-da-da. But when you have to go down there and test, when I took it, I had to learn every basis and what it meant and what it meant for me to take my oath. And I took it serious.
Sure.
So what I'd like to do is teach, and I'm not saying the American citizens or the Sioux Falls citizens are dumb or childish or whatever, but if you're not taught, you don't know. And I want to teach them before I'm out of office how they can protect themselves from a government that we have today. Because if you don't see it today, it's pretty obvious that our government doesn't care. They only care about what they spend money on, what they tell you, and you're not supposed to question them. You should always question authority. That's the only way you keep them in check. So if I can at least do that, I would have accomplished a lot more than I ever thought I could.
Any other goals?
The only other goal is to finish a lot of things that the city of Sioux Falls should have had done many years ago.
Okay.
I mean, we've got. I grew up in Frolic Addition up on the north end. And when we got annexed years ago, it's about 30 years ago now, they're going to do all this improving, curb and gutter, and you name it. And till this day, they haven't done hardly anything. Taxes have increased. There's also a tax right now for storm sewage drainage. Now, if you remember, you probably don't, but years ago they put in the flood dike there at the Benson Road. All of our drainage went to this Benson Road gate so it could go to the spillway. Since the city took over, they've taken out all culverts, all ditches. Now it's just a floodplain. It floods over to where it gets to the point where it runs off. But yet they're paying a storm drainage sewer tax. Why? They haven't gotten it. And that's not the only place in Sioux Falls.
Sure.
Kingswood Estates, right over here, just to the west. I've got constituents that are telling me that they're paying a storm sewage tax. And the Kingswood Estates over there has been probably 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And there's not storm sewers over there either, but they're paying that same tax. But okay, if you're paying the tax, it's great, but what are you getting for it? Where's the money going? Do we keep spending that money on expansion when we haven't even finished what we got? I've got people telling me, hey, you get in office, At least make the rest of the sidewalks finished up that were 60 or 70 years ago. It's like we're going to put that all on hold. We got to spend this money somewhere else. So I would like to make sure that we spend our money within our city instead of keep expanding outside.
Sure.
So.
Next listener question. Other than expanding the police, what would you do to proactively respond to rising crime?
Well, that's pretty simple. Basically, we need to get rid of the defraternization. Police officers right now aren't supposed to get to know the neighbors. They're not supposed to get to know the public because that's fraternizing. We don't want that. I believe we need to get our officers involved with the citizens. And here again, this comes in hand with getting involved. Today's life, we're all so busy trying to make a living. We're all too busy trying to pay our bills and, make sure our cars are running.
Oh, yeah.
So what do we do today? Do we have what we call a lot of neighborhood get-togethers? Do you know who your neighbor is? No, probably not. Most people are in their house and they're out the curtain like this.
Yeah.
They're just kind of peeking out like, what's going on? Get involved. Get the public back into what we used to be. We used to be a small community and everybody knew everybody. And you would sit there and you'd know what's going on next door. Well, the thing is now we have the police officers coming in and getting to know the terrain, the layout. They get to know the people that live there. It's pretty easy to keep control of what's something that's not supposed to be right if everybody stays together. But right now we've been all isolated. And making the police become more aware of the citizens in that area, getting to know them personally. Oh yeah, if they break the law, you still got to arrest them. I'm not saying
right.
But the thing is, at least you know what's going on in each neighborhood. And if the citizens become more involved, they keep their eyes open, they keep their ears open. That's a little bit of a deterrent of crime, that the crime right now likes the fact nobody's involved. So, with that aspect, I just think getting them more involved together, working from both sides, not being such a secretive thing like, leave it alone, we'll take care of it.
Sure. There's a lot of cultural aspect to that. Mm-hmm. What do you think specifically this, in a role as mayor or the city council, how can the city help foster that with police? You're thinking with policies for the police department? But I'm kind of wondering, you're talking about what you're talking about isn't just policing. It's the isolation of, communities in the modern era,
Right.
What specifically do you think the city can do about that? What's kind of to me anyway, is a cultural condition.
Right. Well, what it basically would be is that if people want to change, in office I can put policies down, I can make laws, we could do everything we wanted to force people to do it, but the problem is forcing them is not the way to do it. They have to want to. So I can bring an idea up. And what I'd like to do as far as a policy, I wouldn't really put it in black and white, but I would go out there and actually start talking to the neighborhoods as the mayor and bringing some officers with me and start telling them, this is how we interact with people, okay? You don't walk up to them like, oh, they're all a lawbreaker, that's their whole mindset. You want to go up there and say, these are the citizens we protect. And we want to get to know you and we want you to get to know us. We want you to trust us, but at the same time, we want to be able to trust you as well. And you start building this trust up and people start getting involved. I just think that it would, once they see it would work in one neighborhood, it would just kind of roll over to the other. Do we need the neighborhood watches? Of course we do. But do we need them to the scale that we have them? Because right now, you can't contact anybody on the neighborhood watch because you don't know who they are. Okay? So what good does that do if you're driving down the street?
Yeah, that's not the most effective thing.
Everybody's so secretive, okay? So who do you call? Well, you call the police department. Here we go again. We're going to the police department, and then the police department will get, now, are they going to do their job? I can't tell you that they are. If I'm mayor, I'm going to make them do their job. I'm going to tell them that your number one thing is to protect the citizens. If somebody violates the law, we're going to go after them and we're going to make sure they're going to be arrested and taken to court for what they need. Not this, we don't want to mess with that side, but we'll mess with this side. But the biggest thing is, I have to give them free rein too. I can't, if I tell them how to do it, you can't arrest this place, but you can go over here and arrest that place. That's not right. The laws are laid out. They have to distribute and deal with them equally. But if I'm going to say you don't want to do it here, but you do want to do it here, that's where I think we should stay out of it. And the citizens, once they get the hang of this, I think they'll be happy with it. I mean, having a neighborhood grill out, getting to know your neighbors. Hey, Bob, how's it going? Hey, Jim. Hey, good, how you doing? We don't have a lot of that anymore. you know. But once a neighborhood starts being that, instead of everybody in behind closed doors, they come home, they park, they're in the house, they're gone, nobody else, you know. You know.
Oh yeah.
Things can be going on that you don't even know about as long as it doesn't affect you in your home.
I'm guilty of that. And then it's worse when I have work from home days. So then I'm just here on the keyboard. I literally don't leave the apartment for the day. And I know exactly what you mean.
Right. So if people would just, you know, take the incentive to get a little bit more involved, not so nervous, not so afraid of everything, and as more and more people get involved, you won't have the fear factor either about, oh no, there might be a drive-by shooting, or, you know, because people are watching now. And you know, years ago, you've seen TV shows, and I mean, it's even been obvious that in New York, somebody could be mugged right there in the corner, and 200 people seeing it, and they didn't see nothing.
Yeah.
We don't want that mindset here.
No.
I don't. I would like to bring it back to, I seen what happened. Get involved, you know?
So civic engagement.
Yeah.
Next listener question. How will you ensure that the Sioux Falls is a community that welcomes people of all walks of life? And they list as examples LGBT, immigrant, refugees, etc.
Well, let's you know, the diversity thing is basically what we're talking about here. And I'm an immigrant. I'm German. I came here when I was a year old. And you know, we've got diversity here. South Dakota's actually been very diverse. I mean, the situation is we've welcomed all different cultures, all different beliefs, religions. But the point is there shouldn't be any discrimination because of your color, creed, what you believe or something. But here again, let's go back to the basics. If you expect one side to give up their rights so that your side has more power for a right, that's not equal. So diversity works both ways. Those that expect more diversity have to expect that the fact that the ones that are allowing the diversity have a right as well. We should never have one right that's got more power than the other right, otherwise we have no rights. So, yeah, I wouldn't want discrimination to happen just, well, because they're from Egypt they can't work here or something. No, that wouldn't be it. But if they're going to try and tell you that I can use the bathroom, but you can't, which way do we look at it here? You know? So it depends on what culture's trying to push what on who and why they shouldn't or should not, you know. So I believe that it's pretty much a normal happening here in Sioux Falls. It's just we're trying to pick it out to be something more than it is. And we got to quit trying to say that this right is more important than this right. And until we understand that, it's going to be a verbal battle of LGBT has more rights than a normal non-gay male or something. But the thing is they both have rights. You can't say this one's more important than this one. It has to be equal.
Okay. How would you get more living wage jobs in Sioux Falls?
Well, I would take a lot of the money of Sioux Falls, instead of spending it on buildings we don't need, and I'd start reinvesting it in entrepreneurs that we have right here in the city. Sometimes you can bring in a place like Linton Microwave. Brought in 300-400 jobs. They brought in 1,500 employees with them. We gave them a tax break, incentive to come here. How many years later? They're gone. Gateway 2000. Can we bring outside corporations in here? It always seems like I said, the city and the county and the state and the federals are all into this commerce, even though they say they shouldn't be. We're bringing all these incentives of why we want them to come here to generate jobs for our people that are here. Problem is, it's either short-lived, or eventually they lose a contract from the government or some big contract and they go. Now we have an empty building, no taxes, maybe somebody else will buy it. I believe we should take some of this money, instead of putting it into a tax incentive to bring outside sources here, we should rely on trying to see what we can cultivate here. Because I'm an entrepreneur. I started my own business from nothing. And I think if we invested in our people, the citizens of Sioux Falls, we could have more ideas and more money coming in than we could ever imagine. But we keep restricting them because, we don't want to take a chance, but we'll make sure the big business has a chance. I think we're overlooking a gold mine here.
So with supporting entrepreneurship, what specifically would you do to foster like a local entrepreneur culture? I hang out with people from, I don't know if you remember the bakery, which was kind of the business incubator co-working space kind of place, and like the entrepreneurship communities on Facebook here in Sioux Falls. I've got a lot of friends over at Zeal, that co-working space. So if this is a topic I hear about and talk about a lot, what specifically, like, help with finance, or do you think there's, like, regulation that's in the way? What specifically do you think would help the local entrepreneurial ecosystem?
I believe a lot of it's got to do with regulation. If you've ever noticed, and I mean, if you've got a lot of friends in there and you talk to them, and if they really think about it, and if you take what I'm going to tell you right now to heart, you'll understand that I know what I'm talking about. It seems like all of our regulations to restrict you from even thinking about starting a small business was not there for the citizen's safety. It was never there for the citizen's safety. It was there to make sure that big corporations weren't going to have any kind of competition. So what we need to do is not regulate somebody starting out new against a corporation, but we need to have them have a different regulation that says, hey, we're going to give you a chance to get to this point, but you're never going to have the EPA issues that they have because they look at how big they are. But we've got it all slammed down to where it's almost impossible for you to try and do anything out of your home, in a small business. It's all generated for big money. If you wanted to start something out of your home, for say like you're doing the podcast here, it's great. This is qualified to go ahead and do this. But now if you wanted to do something like I did, which was repair engines, even if I owned my own home, and I had a 2-stall garage, I still had all these regulations that told me I couldn't do it.
Yep.
And the biggest argument was you cannot work where you live.
Yeah.
Back 150 years ago, everybody worked where they lived.
Yeah, and it's not like you're like using an impact. I assume you're not using like an impact wrench at 3 a.m. waking up your neighbors. It's just like but you're working in your own garage.
Yeah, but what I would like to do is take the deregulation and bring it down to the fact where as long as your neighbors are okay with it, obviously you got to get along with your neighbors. That's the number one thing. And if you get along with your neighbors, why would the city care? Why would the state care? The state doesn't even care. You can get a state license. You can operate at any address. But then the city gets in there and went, oh no, you got to go over here and get this building. Well, that's double marketing too, because now you pay for your home and you pay taxes there, and now you're going to pay for the rent and the utilities there, so you got double utilities. They take the entrepreneur right out of the ballpark. So in other words, come down to SBA and get a $500,000 loan. Now the bank owns you.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is not be owned to anybody, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how I roll. I bootstrap.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's what I would like to do. I would like to give people that chance because even if the bank owns you, people say, oh, you got a bank loan. Yeah. No, if the bank doesn't like what you're doing, they can call that loan in at any point in time, or if some government entity wants to say, hey, you're going to follow this or else, they can pull some strings. Don't tell me they can't. We already seen this. It's just like right now, if you want to be a building contractor. Years ago, it started out as, we want to make sure that citizens are getting quality work. So it all started out as a quality control license.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with quality control. It just has to do with you're going to pay us so much to operate in the city of Sioux Falls. But if you don't kiss our butt, we can pull that license with no argument. And you're out of business. That's what I want to get rid of. Why are we doing this? If it's not betterment for the citizen, who's it betterment for? And how many people could actually support their families to doing a side job? Working a full-time job, maybe tinkering and not hurting the neighbors, doing a service for their neighbors or even more people in the city. And then they make that little extra money. What is wrong with that? Nothing. Except for it's competition against bigger money. That's what I want to do. But like I said, if you think about it, all the regulations, you just kind of look at it a little closer. And what is the regulations actually protecting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. Okay, this one's a bit of a spoof, but we were asking it of all the candidates. So you're driving down a dark road on a stormy night. You're groggy, your vision is a little blurry, and you round the corner and you see a squirrel in the middle of the road playing a tiny glass magic flute. Do you swerve and take the ditch and miss the squirrel, or do you hit the squirrel?
Well, let's see. It probably swerved and missed the squirrel.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I don't want to run. I don't want to hurt nothing
I hear you.
if I don't have to. But I guess I would like to get out of the ditch and go over there and say, "What were you doing with that flute in the middle of the road?"
I like how the gap is not. There's a flute. There's a magic flute. There's a squirrel that can play it. Your whole thing is, why are you in the middle of the road? Very nice. Okay. The last question that I ask all candidates. This is something I started in the very first campaign I covered like this. Why specifically, over any of the other candidates, should I vote for you?
Well, because I fought the system, state, federal, and county level, and I won. And I believe that I can bring to the table a breath of fresh air that the citizens haven't seen for the last 50 years. We've got to quit doing the main normal. We've got to quit doing continue business as usual. I believe people are ready for a change. And the only way you're going to get a change is to get somebody that's probably rebellious like me. You got 4 years. Give me 4 years, try it. I don't see where I'm going to do anything wrong. I really don't, because I'm for the people. And if I got the people behind me, how can I mess up? I have no personal agenda. I'm not in this for fame. I'm not in this for fortune. And I'm not in this for popularity.
It's not a springboard for running for something bigger later?
No. I'm offering once. Everybody says, oh, you don't win this year, you can run next year. No. I'm going to be 61 in June. I want to go and enjoy my life. Because right now I'm on disability. I have my shop, but that's all done by the employees now. I can tinker there, but I can just go fishing. I could not have a care in the world and just let it pass me by, but I'm looking at my grandkids, my kids, my great-grandkids, and all the other citizens that I may possibly be able to help. I don't think I need my name on anything. I just want to try to make a good difference.
Very good. Mike, how can people learn more about you?
Well, I've got a Facebook page. It's Mike Gunn for Mayor, or it's Mike Gunn. They can add me and tell me who they are, because if I don't know them, I'm not going to add them. There's too many trolls out there. And then they like to plug up your Facebook with all their dramatic little stuff. And
it's the guy who manages 8 of those things. Yeah, it's a constant battle.
Yeah. Otherwise, I put my phone number out on my flyers and on my business and my little campaign cards. I'm also going to be here very soon. I've got a 14-foot step van that I'm going to put banners on, and then I'm going to go and sit at like 12th and Kiwanis, and I'm going to go sit at 10th and Cliff, and wherever I can, where I can just get a little bit of visibility.
Sure.
I am not running on money. I'm running on my own, and I'm actually telling people that I do not want donations. I want their vote. I do not want their money, because I want to show them that if we can do this, it ain't just me. If the people do this, showing that I didn't need money, that I didn't need their donations, and I'm not beholden to anyone, I got the feeling our city government's going to be in a complete awe of the people made a choice. So, I mean, there's a lot of word of mouth going around. I have been going up and having coffee every Sunday between 1 and 2. It'll probably be 2 to 4 or 2 to 3 at Crackpot on North Minnesota. Nice, very nice little restaurant. And if people want to get to know me more, I've been doing that every Sunday. And like I said, I might change that to 2 to 3 because we have that church rush that we're kind of mingling in over.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, otherwise I'll be driving around town. It'll be me and the puppy on the banner, and
you got a campaign mascot, huh?
Yep, yes I do. I've started that from the day one.
Nice.
And I picked her up as a rescue puppy, and she doesn't want to leave. She was actually depressed with me when I told her she had to stay home tonight. She wants to do everything with me, so.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Mike, and good luck.
Hey, thanks for having me.